Welcome to the Quick Sale Home Realty Team podcast. I'm Ken.
And I'm Cassie. We're both part of the team here at Quick Sale Home Realty.
Today, we're getting into something really important, especially if you're a homeowner. We're talking about estate planning. Now, look, we know thinking about, the future, what happens to your assets, it can feel a bit, daunting.
It really can. But honestly, having a plan, a solid plan, it gives you such peace of mind, real security.
Exactly. And that's our goal today, right? To kind of pull out the key info on estate planning, help you understand the basics, and crucially, why it matters so much when you own a home.
Absolutely. We want to make it clear and understandable for everyone listening.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning. What is estate planning, really, in simple terms?
Right. So think of it bigger than just one document. It's the whole process, setting up legal arrangements for what happens if you pass away or, if you can't make decisions for yourself anymore. It's really about making sure your wishes are followed and your family is looked after.
Okay, so it's not just having a will then.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people hear estate planning and just think will.
Yeah, that's a super common thought, but it's a key difference. A will is like the foundation, absolutely. It's that legal paper saying who gets what after you die.
Right.
But proper estate planning, it's broader. It includes the will, yes, but often involves other legal tools too, depending on what you need.
Other tools, like what sort of things?
Well, it really varies, but you might have things like trusts, which we can talk more about.
Okay.
Or maybe a durable power of attorney that lets someone you trust handle finances or healthcare decisions if you become incapacitated. Things like that. It's tailored,
Right. Not one size fits all. So when should someone, especially a homeowner, start thinking about this? It feels like one of those things people push off.
Oh, definitely. People delay it all the time. But honestly, it's never really too soon to start thinking about it. Maybe it's not top priority when you're very young, but certain life events really bring it to the forefront. They make it important to start a plan or update the one you have.
What kind of events are we talking about? Like milestones?
Exactly. Big things like having kids.
Yeah.
Or buying a house. Those are huge triggers. Suddenly you have dependents or this major asset. Having clear instructions becomes way more critical.
And the benefit of doing it early instead of waiting.
Oh, huge benefits. Planning ahead can prevent so many potential problems and honestly, extra costs for your family later on.
Right.
It just provides a clear path, clarity during what's already a really tough emotional time. Think of it like a gift, really, a gift of preparedness.
Okay, let's talk about the house itself then. It's often the biggest asset, right? How does owning a home specifically fit into estate planning?
Absolutely. For most people, their home is their most valuable asset, financially and emotionally too. Often.
Sure.
So because of that, you absolutely have to give it serious thought in your estate plan. It's critical.
So what specific things about the house do we need to consider when we're planning?
Okay, several key things. First, how the property is titled. Legally, whose name is on the deed. That's fundamental.
Got it. Title.
Second, is there a mortgage? And third, do you co-own it with someone? These details really dictate how the house gets handled in your estate.
Can you give an example, like how titling changes things?
Sure. Let's say you own it jointly with your spouse with right of survivorship. When one person passes, it might automatically go to the surviving spouse, bypassing some processes. But if you own it just in your name, totally different situation.
Okay, that makes sense. You mentioned trusts earlier. They sound kind of complex. What is a trust exactly?
Yeah.
And how does it help with a home?
Yeah, the word trust can sound a bit intimidating, I get that. But basically, it's a legal arrangement. One person, the trustee, holds assets like your house for someone else, the beneficiary.
So it's like a container for assets.
Kind of, yeah. A container that holds things according to the rules you set up.
And for a home, who's usually the trustee and beneficiary.
Often, with what's called a living trust, you might actually be your own trustee while you're alive. And the beneficiary, too. Then you name someone, a successor trustee, to take over after you pass, managing it for your chosen beneficiaries, maybe your kids, for instance.
Okay. And the big advantage you mentioned.
Right. The big one, especially for homeowners, is that putting your home in a trust can often help it bypass probate.
Probate. Okay, what's probate? I hear that word a lot.
Probate is the court process. The court supervises validating the will and distributing the estate's assets. And, well, It can sometimes take a long time.
And cost money.
And cost money, yes. Court fees, potentially legal fees, it can be slow. If your home is in a trust set up correctly, it can often pass directly to your beneficiaries without needing to go through that whole court process. It's a more direct path.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like a major plus. Could save a lot of time, stress.
It really can.
Are there other ways to transfer a house besides a will or a trust? Any alternatives?
Yes, there are. In some states, not all, but some, you might have something called a transfer on death deed or TOD deed.
Transfer on death.
Yeah, it lets you name who automatically gets the house when you die, again, potentially avoiding probate. But like I said, availability and the specific rules depend heavily on your state. You'd need to check locally.
Good to know. Anything else homeowners should check regarding the property title itself for planning?
Oh, absolutely. Super important. Make sure your title records are accurate, like really up to date.
When would they get out of date?
Think about refinancing your mortgage, or if you've had a name change, marriage, divorce, or if ownership changed hands somehow over the years. Clear, correct title docs prevent so much confusion, maybe even legal fights later. Imagine your family finding out the ownership isn't what everyone thought. That's a mess.
Definitely want to avoid that mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about having a plan. What happens if someone doesn't? What are the downsides, especially for the house?
Well, if there's no will, no trust, no legal instructions at all, then state law takes over. The state decides who inherits everything, including the home.
And that might not be what you wanted at all, right?
Exactly. The state's rules for inheritance, called intestacy laws, might give your house to someone you wouldn't have chosen. It can cause huge family conflicts, legal headaches, delays, stress, all during a time that's already incredibly difficult.
Sound awful, really. Just adds pain to grief.
It really does. And, okay, this is rare, but if the state can't find any legal errors according to its rules, your property could actually end up going to the state itself.
Wow.
So planning gives you the control. It provides that clarity and protection for the people you care about.
Okay, another big question. Mortgages. What about debts on the house? Do they just disappear when someone dies?
That's a critical point. No, they don't disappear. Mortgages, home equity loans, any liens on the property, they stick with the house.
So the debt is still there. Whoever inherits the house inherits the debt.
Well, they inherit the property subject to the debt. So unless they plan to sell the house quickly to pay it off, the beneficiaries usually have to take over the payments.
Ah.
Or they might need to refinance the loan in their own name if they qualify and the lender allows it. It's something they absolutely have to deal with.
So you really need to think about that when deciding who inherits. Can they actually afford the house?
Precisely. You should consider the whole financial picture for your beneficiary. Can they handle the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, upkeep? Having those conversations up front, if you can, is really helpful.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly to taxes. Estate tax, inheritance tax. Sounds complicated. How does that relate to the home?
Yeah, taxes can seem complex. So there are two main types to know. Estate tax is potentially levied on the total value of your estate when you pass, but only if it's above a pretty high threshold.
Okay.
Inheritance tax is different. That's paid by the person inheriting the assets.
And are these federal, state?
Good question. Estate tax can be federal and state, depending on the estate's value and where you live. The federal threshold is very high right now, so fewer estates pay it. But some states have their own estate tax with lower thresholds.
And inheritance tax.
Inheritance tax is less common. It only exists at the state level and only in a handful of states currently. So whether these apply really depends on your state and your estate's value.
So it varies a lot by location and how much everything is worth.
Exactly. And keep in mind, tax laws change. Federal, state, they can be adjusted. So what's true today might not be in 5 or 10 years. It could affect how much tax is owed on an inherited home down the line.
So how do people figure this out? How do you minimize that tax hit for your family?
The best way really is professional advice. Talk to an experienced estate planner or a tax advisor who knows your local laws.
Right.
They can look at your specific situation and suggest strategies, maybe certain types of trusts or gifting strategies or other techniques to lessen the potential tax burden on your beneficiaries.
This all really drives home that point, doesn't it? There are so many details and things change based on where you live in your own situation.
Absolutely. Estate planning isn't generic. The laws, the practices, they vary significantly state by state, sometimes even locally. What's standard procedure in one place might be different or not even possible somewhere else.
So boiling it all down, what's the main takeaway for our listeners who own homes? The most important step?
Get personalized, professional guidance. That's the key. We definitely recommend talking to a qualified real estate professional like us here at Quick Sale Home Realty. We can help you understand your property's value in the current market.
Okay.
And just as importantly, maybe even more so, talk to an experienced estate planning attorney in your state. They're the ones who can give you tailored legal advice for your specific circumstances and help you build a solid, effective plan that follows your state's laws.
That really makes sense. It's about taking those proactive steps, isn't it? Planning ahead to protect that big asset, your home, and just making things easier for your family.
Exactly. Your home is a huge part of your legacy. It deserves that careful thought in your estate plan.
Well said. And remember, if you want to discuss your real estate needs or just get some initial guidance, you can always call us at Quick Sale Home Realty. The number is 718-725-7472.
One of our team members would be happy to chat and help point you in the right direction.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Quick Sale Home Realty Team podcast today.
Thanks, everyone.